Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon to the webinar. Thanks for joining us today for Laserfiche users' favorite features. And I was just going through the agenda. We're going to go through staff favorites, jump into a couple of live demos to see some automation, and then we're going to end with resources and questions. So I started with a poll, which you're seeing right now, just trying to collect who is using which interface of Laserfiche to, take a look at your documents and peruse through the repository. And then throughout my presentation, I'll be focusing on that interface for everybody, so you can see how to do those favorites and things like that. So it looks like a majority of users on today are using the desktop client, which is also what I use here mainly at CDI, just because that's, what I started with when I started, about 14 years ago. And so that's what I'm comfortable with. But the web client allows us to do some of the same things that we are going to look through today, as well as cloud. So let's jump back into the presentation here. So these first few screenshots are going to be more related to looking at documents and viewing content within the repository. So something that came up with a newer client that I've been working with is, can you customize your Laserfiche view? And you certainly can. You can update the column headers, you can create import profiles, you can generate text, and all of that. So let's jump in quick to the repository. So when I say customize your view, your folder structure system might be set up something like this, where you have your folders on the left hand and then your content preview here in the middle. But you can also add a customization for being able to see the page preview of your document. And so you can add, apply that, not apply it. But the way to get it to stick in your system is if you go into your tools and then go into options. This is where you're going to see all of your customization settings. So if we go into browser, we have the ability to adjust your columns. So again, if you're working in HR and you want to see more HR related field information, you can have it applied to all folders, or you can have it set up so that it's remembered for each individual folder. So if you use each individual folder, that would typically relate to, if you are in accounts payable, you're also doing things with clients and vendors, maybe those are all each a different template within your repository. And so you can set it up, again, to remember each individual folder or apply to all. You can do lots of other customizations in here. Generate pages is something that also recently came up with a client I've been working with. So they have a PDF in their repository and they couldn't open the PDF. It was just saying this error, no documents are selected, or there's no electronic file. And so something I want to show quick is if we just go into one of these folders, we have this PDF document. Sometimes if you click on it and you get an error, what you can do is right click and say open, and then you can open the Laserfiche pages, which are the TIFF images that get generated if we are OCRing the text. Or if you view the electronic file, that's going to go ahead and open up the PDF for you. So if you're ever getting that error, always remember you can right click and then either view the pages or the electronic file. And you can set that as a default as well. So you can adjust those column headers. Oh, I want to jump back and just show you that. So these are the column headers again. Here within this client's folder, I can see the household name, document type. If I want to adjust that, on a whim, I can just right click on that header here and then selectively choose the fields that I want to display. So if I wanted to do employee files or something like that, I could add that new template there or that new column header there, and I'd be able to see that information. Something else I really like to point out, even though it wasn't one of the staff favorites, then if you have, a bunch of metadata within a folder and you want to extract that and have it in Excel format, you can do that too, assuming you have the appropriate permissions in your system. So you can go to File and download a report of text, and then it's going to export essentially an Excel file of all of the metadata information within your view. So that's kind of a fun feature as well. So customizing your Laserfiche view, those headers, import profiles. This is another really fun one in that options menu. So if you find yourself bringing in the same document type over and over again, and you always have to select the template, and sometimes it gets annoying to you, or maybe you're bringing in a certain document type into a specific folder in the repository, you can create import profiles that automatically apply a template selection and maybe some default metadata in those fields for you upon bringing those files into the system. So you can set up as many import profiles as you need. And it works across the board. So it works not only on the desktop client, but also within the web client. It recognizes your preferences as well. So import profiles are really good. They save a lot of time and save you a lot of clicks if you are dragging and dropping a lot of content into the system. So keyboard shortcuts. You also have the ability to customize your keyboard menu. So if you do a lot of work mainly on your keyboard, we see this a lot with core clerks that we're working with. They do everything on the keyboard. They don't have time for their mouse. And so you have the ability to customize the keyboard and your shortcuts for your Laserfiche system, specific to you, however you want. So again, you can go into tools, and then instead of options, you'll do customize keyboard, and you can go ahead and adjust that. Something else I wanted to show, which is something that I recently learned, again, from a customer who came to us and was like, having to comb through my client files, and backtrack out of folders is kind of annoying. So what we talked about is you can use the up and down arrow keys once you're in your folder structure. So if you have your folder view highlighted and you click up and down, you can do that. You can click enter to expand. You can use the back arrows to minimize, forward arrows to expand. And then you can also, once you're in a folder, so if you click enter, you can type a letter, and then it will jump down to where that letter contains within that folder structure that you're opening. So just a couple of quick tips to help you navigate around. Here I just clicked the F twice and it jumped to financial planning since that was the first one, but then when I hit it again, it jumped down to fan patty. So again, just helping you kind of breeze through those folders a little bit more quickly. Annotation properties. This is something that is newer as of a couple of years ago with Laserfiche, but when you're applying redactions to your documents, typically it defaults to a black redaction, and then it's this big black box that looks scary and ominous. And then if you email it out, it's a huge black box so that people can't see that redacted text. But you can change it. You can, apply your redaction, right-click the redaction, select properties, and then you can change your redaction fill. So it can be black or it can be white. Having white is really great because then if you're printing those documents, you're saving on ink. It looks a little bit cleaner, again, less ominous as to what is behind that. It's more so, it seems like that information is either just missing or incomplete to the end user. And then you can certainly save that as a default. You can do some additional customizations, but it can be a black box or a white box, which is kind of neat. This is another fun one. Again, learned from a client. This is nothing I had ever done myself or knew was an option, but you have the ability to edit the OCR text on files. So again, if you're a heavy Laserfiche user, you have the ability, I just need to make sure that everybody, okay. If you're a heavy Laserfiche user and you're bringing in a lot of scanned documents and you notice that the OCR text isn't quite right because maybe there's extra lines on there and so it picked up those lines as text and it's not supposed to be that way, as long as you have permissions, you can edit the OCR text on your documents. So you just open the file, you make sure you have your text pane viewable, and then you would just right click and then you can say edit text, and then you have the ability to, scrolling, you have the ability to adjust that OCR text. Some clients like to use this to add specific notes like, hey, this document has been reviewed. Maybe if they don't have workflow, that's where they kind of take their notes and things like that. So you can adjust that OCR text for accuracy. Splitting apart documents. So this, may also seem really basic to a lot of you, but some people don't know that this is a feature. And then, one of the questions I get asked a lot, when I'm presenting and doing demonstrations is, well, a lot of times I scan in a lot of documents. Can I split those apart? Or, can I do a historical batch scan and split that apart? And certainly you can. It's not like trying to split apart pages in a PDF. Laserfiche makes it really easy. So you just open up your document, you highlight the thumbnails that you want, right click and say create new document. If metadata information was already applied to that file, it will by default apply that same metadata detail to the new document that you're creating, but then from there you can adjust it accordingly and save it into the repository. So using those thumbnails to kind of drag and drop and rearrange and separate documents makes life a lot easier. Hot folders through import agent. So what import agent does, for those of you who may not be really familiar, is it's a Laserfiche module or add-on in some cases that can be set up to monitor network folders and pull the information in to Laserfiche automatically from those folders. So here, in this particular scenario, we've got an organization who has a hot folder set up for each department. And so department users can add documents into these folders, and then it will bring it into the appropriate folder structure area within Laserfiche. And this is where you can also set up those import profiles along with your import agent. You can identify, when a document is put in the network folder from accounting and it is named, XYZ. When it's brought into Laserfiche, we want to have that be identified as a check with the metadata applied and maybe a database lookup that pulls in the rest of the information and then auto-files it into the folder. You can set up import agent and create as many import agent profiles, across your organization as you want. It's just a per server license. Workflow is always a fan favorite. There are a couple of specific workflow tools I want to talk about, but here I'm going to launch another poll because I'm always curious to see who's using workflow. So are you using workflow? No? Yes? Well, this was not at all the what I was expecting from this poll. So give it another second here. We are at, oh, okay, it's changing. It's changing. I should have left that maybe so off. So right now we are at 41% of users on today's call are using workflow, 50% are not, and only 9% say maybe so. That's surprising to me, just because workflow is, I guess, one of the newer drivers for clients to the Laserfiche system. Not only, you get that full text searching and that secure, repository, but with workflow, you can automate any process that you have in your organization. So I want to call out a couple of um, internal favorites here. So automatic reminders and escalations. So if you kick off a workflow for intaking a new document and somebody needs to approve it or look at it or move it from one section to the next or whatever your process may be, you can set up escalations. So if they haven't tended to it within a specific amount of times, you can get really aggressive with those reminders. You can have them go out daily or hourly or, just weekly or escalate to a manager. So you have the ability to customize the frequency of those reminders and escalate it according to your standards and needs for whatever that process flow is. So this escalation activity is just a standard out of the box workflow activity that you can put into any process flow, and design reminders around. This was another fan favorite from the staff internally here at CDI, the database workflow activities. So this is going to be specific to a self-hosted deployment of Laserfiche. But with these workflow activities, you have the ability to query, update, or insert data, from other databases into Laserfiche. So where you might see this is if I jump back into my repository, I'm going to just take this off. I'm going to go into metadata. So we're going to select client files. So this doesn't have to be used for client files. It could be used for anything. But if you have a database of information on contacts or vendors or, departments, something like that, we can use a database to populate a live drop-down list, for your templates for easy selection. So here, this is a live client files list, from a database that's getting pulled in to make selecting my users really easy. Another example would be if you want to have an integration with a CRM. We will take a look at that a little bit later, but you can have information, pushed into a database to, create actions or create workflows or to send notifications. This push and pull from database workflow activities is really valuable if you are hoping to really streamline your processes. All right, so let's take a look at a basic auto filing workflow. Typically for every new deployment of Laserfiche or departments that are new to Laserfiche, within an organization that's already had it, this is a really good spot to start with automation. And it's by far a fan favorite because it makes everything really simple. So I'm just going to jump into my repository, human resources, incoming scans. So it's really typical to have an incoming scans folder. And then from here, you can import documents. I'm just going to grab one from my desktop. All of my ones are hiding. So I'm just going to grab this professional services brochure. That's what it's called. I'm going to add the HR employee files template. Again, I've got a drop-down list, going into that database again, selecting my consulting department, Andrew. This is going to be a miscellaneous file, an accident, and then car accident. I actually feel like I shouldn't do that. It feels ominous. Request for verification of employment. New job. I don't know. So I'm going to select OK. And then workflow is set up behind the scenes. So I dragged and dropped that document in here. It's not here. Where did it go? It's because workflow grabbed it and auto-filed it. So based on the metadata information I applied, if I go into Andrew's folder, into miscellaneous, we can see here that that document that was originally called professional services brochure is now called, today's date, the employee name, what the document type was, and then, if I had that notes field filled out, it appends new job. And so you can use that metadata information to help you build an auto-filing workflow so that you don't have to go into the folder, drill down, and still apply the metadata in order to get that searching capability within the system. So let me pull back up my slides. Quick fields. All right, so this is another one. Quick fields, for those of you who are not really familiar, it is a module that allows you to build document profiles for recognition. So what we're going to take a look at is Laserfiche quick fields processing a batch of checks and invoices and routing them around for approval. It's going to recognize the check information. It's going to do a database lookup. It's going to populate the metadata and then store into the Laserfiche repository. So let's jump into that. So Quick Fields is a per seat license, which means, it gets installed on a machine. Some organizations install Quick Fields in a server environment, so multiple people can take advantage of it when they need to do processing. Otherwise, if you've got lots of users scanning in a lot of content really regularly, you can get them each a license. And there are different modules depending on, what type of recognition you need to have done on your documents. So we have this set up. It's a checks demo. And so what it's doing is it's going to classify documents. And this is just my sample file. And this is what we build our document classification off of. So it's going to look for checks, and then when it finds a check, it's going to look for the check number, and then it's going to do that database lookup. So here I am having Quick Fields pull from just a Laserfiche folder. So again, you can have users scan into a folder and then have Quick Fields process it later on so that they don't have to scan it while they're sitting there. And so here's just what our batch of documents looks like. It consists of a check, the invoice, check, invoice, a whole big batch of that. And then if we click play or start, it's going to start the process and it's going to pull from that folder, recognize and identify where a check starts, where one ends, and then again do all those database lookups, apply all the metadata. So we can see here in the document revision area, it's created the folders of where those documents are going to get stored. If I drill into it, I can see the document that was identified, so check 3403. It found the vendor number, the check amount, the check number, all of this from doing a database lookup into our database, and then pre-populating the metadata so that from here, when I store it to the repository, it's going to create these folders if they didn't exist, which I'll show you. In my vendors area, there's nothing. Sorry, lots of windows and screens. And then we're going to go ahead and click store. So it's going to push all of that detail into the repository where it's going to become text searchable. Again, it can kick off any other process that you might want to see. just created today. Here is our vendor folder structure with all of our documents. I also want to point out something else fun. This little icon is showing up as purple or blue. I don't know what you want to call that. But you have the ability to customize colors on documents or folders, and that's done by a template or applying a specific metadata field. So if you're interested in learning about that a little bit more, let us know. But I always think that's kind of fun. Seeing a lot of colors can indicate, whether this has been approved or rejected or, in process. It can be used for status type things or whatever really you want. Forms, Laserfiche forms for life. This is by far another fan favorite of users who are maximizing their Laserfiche use. You can build an electronic form for everything, really, really everything. So I have just a couple of quick examples here. So time off requests, so simple things, and then when it's submitted, it goes through an approval, process, or something more detailed like a contract process where you select a contract type and it populates and creates their standardized contract and routes it around for approval, all of that. Another way that we have been seeing forms get used is, again, not only collecting information and allowing you to collect information, but also allowing you to display information in a really handy way. So we here at CDI have been building a lot of dashboards for customers. This is probably one of the more popular requests. And so what we're looking at is just this screenshot. If you've been a part of any of my webinars before, this is something I really harp on because I think it's really cool. But we use this as our intranet. It's just a web URL, a Laserfiche form web URL customized to display information to us in a helpful way. So you can see up here, each department has their own set of tabs. And so you can set that up based on user so that they are only seeing the tabs that they should see, when they log in to view the form and things like that. So dashboards for intranets, dashboards for helping you see all of the different contracts that you have in place, or potentially a dashboard for status on your employee onboarding, things like that. So Laserfiche forms and email approvals. Ooh, so this is something that I feel like is lesser known. It is available in self-hosted deployments, but you can build a Laserfiche process that has an approval where you can submit the approval via email instead of logging into the task box and approving it. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like. I'm just going to do a refresh. All right, so we're just going to do an invoice routing for approval. Vendor name, Rockstar, invoice number, due date, amount $500, notes. I love Rockstar. It's my preferred energy drink of choice. I know everybody's interested in that. So I'm going to go ahead and attach a document. Try to close out of some of these windows. Professional services brochure again, and I'm going to go ahead and click submit. So I've submitted that form, and now if I jump into my email, I will get an email for that task. I'm just going to bring that up. So here's this task. A new invoice has been submitted for approval. I can click here to go ahead and open the task if I want. Oops. Or I can reply, approve, or deny. So if I do reply all, approved, click send, I can have the approval in the body of the email, or I can put it in the subject of the email. You can have it set up either way. And then when you jump into your repository, all right, let me pull that up. All of my demos are in different areas, so bear with me for 1 second. We'll be able to see that then the system has recognized that as an approval and created the folder structure again if it didn't exist, and auto-filed that approval and everything within my repository. So just pulling that over here, we're taking a look at the web interface, accounts payable, incoming in the master vendor files. Here is our Rockstar folder just created today in Pacific time. Oh no, it's been switched. And our invoice. And we can see again that professional services brochure was renamed to the invoice number and date. And then we've got our forms approval right here that we can see. So that history is available, approved by who and when. You can also have that approval get appended to that main document, so it's just a single invoice file versus having two. Again, it's all about how you want your process set up and your flow to work. All right, so let's jump back into the PowerPoint. Integrations. This is another fan favorite for Laserfiche, being able to integrate and have workflow activities within your workflow automation tool set. And so what we're looking at here, this is just kind of a main screenshot of what the document looks like once it gets pulled back in to the Laserfiche system. But this longer list of things are some of the custom workflow activities that CDI has built out and are available. So we're going to take a look and focus on the DocuSign signature piece. And we're going to take a look at that contract onboarding process from kind of start to finish, and we'll get to see the DocuSign integration in action. So again, behind the scenes, workflow is just taking the information that we generated and started in forms and doing everything with workflow that we tell it to do, and then once it's approved, pushing it out via DocuSign. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to go into contracts, new contract request. Put my whole information in here. Webinar happenings. Again, Laserfiche workflow can do mail merge type of things. So based on the contract type selected, that will default to a specific contract type. I'm going to do an existing vendor. Just kidding. I'm going to do a new one. Database lookups, again, helping you dynamically populate information throughout your forms. Selecting a date. And then I'm just going to submit this. We're going to keep it simple because what we're going to focus on here is the DocuSign piece. So our DocuSign integration, it's by far our most popular CDI integration. Built by our team first, and it's available through a lot of other resellers. If you are not an existing CDI client, but you're interested in the integration, you can either talk to your reseller or come to us directly. We're happy to help. I'm just going to go through these few approvals. So if you haven't seen forms much, we've got a lot of good forms automation videos through our YouTube site. Definitely take a look at those. So I'm just kind of breezing through this. Our contracts process has multiple approval steps. You can view the contract folder, the contract information, all of that. I'm just going to say approved so we can kick off that DocuSign signing ceremony. So the DocuSign piece can happen in a few different ways. It can be built out as part of a workflow process like we're looking at now, or you can just select a document within the repository. So if I jump into my repository, mine is not going to be configured, but you could have a toolbar button, a custom toolbar button that says send this document to DocuSign. And then it would push this file into DocuSign where you could then fill out all of the envelope information. Or if you don't initiate the signing of your documents through Laserfiche at all, that doesn't matter. The integration can still be set up so that once a document goes through your DocuSign account, after it's signed, it can get pulled back into Laserfiche. And then the extra cool part about it is that when you send those envelopes out, if your end user fills in any fillable fields within the DocuSign envelope, like maybe they're updating their social security number or their address or something like that, those fields of information that they fill out would then be eligible to get pulled back in via the Laserfiche integration and be used to update metadata or update a database or push changes into your CRM. So a lot of flexibility there. I just talked through this, but I have one more to do because it's a contract. Contracts have to go out to 2 people. But I had received an email, and this is what your end user would receive if you are initiating the signing of documents through Laserfiche workflow. But you can customize the subject. If we download the pictures, you have the ability to customize the body. Depending on what version of DocuSign you have, you can do additional customizations, and you can have it, be less DocuSign in your face and more, your city or, your organization. But that's a DocuSign feature. So your end user is getting this. They go ahead and just review the document. They agree to sign. They finish it up. And then what's going to happen now that the contract has been signed by both parties, if I jump into my repository, actually I'll do the desktop client again. It's not going to be complete yet, but we'll see here Rockstar Laserfiche Company webinar happenings. It's created this folder structure for us. If I go into it, I can see my Word document. I'm going to go ahead and open it up just so you can see that quick. So again, it took this standardized Word document and anything in this orangey red color, it pushed into this file for me and then was sent out. And then once the integration brings the document back in, it will move it from contracts in process to active contracts. And we'll just take a look at a different example here. So I'm going to just sort by my column headers up here at the top by the creation date, actually. So yesterday we did Hudson Hospital. If we go in there, the integration has the ability to bring back in the document and rename it something different. So we can see that there was a signed version or an unsigned version, and now there's the signed version. And then you also get the DocuSign certificate of completion. What's really neat about that is then you don't ever have to go into DocuSign to verify the signature. All of that information is retained and available right through your Laserfiche repository. Again, saving you some time looking up, having to haggle with other applications, if you switched digital signature providers somewhere along the line, all of that would still be available within your Laserfiche repository. All right, so now if we jump back in wish I knew how to set this up indefinitely. But now I just kind of want to go over the resources again. These are resources available through CDI if you are an existing CDI client. Our client portal, where you can take a look at support cases, open support tickets, kind of see its history or their history. We do have consulting services for, any workflow automation tools that you want to build out, things like that. Our YouTube library, I highly recommend checking this out. And maybe doing a search. If you're in HR, do a search for HR or contracts or DocuSign or Salesforce, things like that. You can search through our YouTube library and see some other quick live demo videos or webinars that go into more detail on some of those topics. And then also our monthly webinars, so signing up for other webinars like today's through our website. I did hear today that they are going to add some more potentially later this afternoon, so you'll get to see some of the upcoming months as well. And then the Laserfiche resources. These are again available through the slide deck if you're interested, or if you go back and watch this presentation later, you can always find them. Something else I just want to remind everybody of is the solution marketplace. So if you're not using workflow, which it sounds like unfortunately a lot of you are not, go check out this solution marketplace, because there's lots of pre-configured workflow processes that you can just add to your system and then customize from there. So there is already a lot of HR processes. There's a lot of different contract processes. There's permitting. There's client onboarding, vendor onboarding. Available to just kind of plop into your system and then readjust to your folder structure and your teams and users from there. So that's another really great resource for you. So here I'm going to open it up to questions, and I not only am soliciting your questions, but I would also really love to hear if anybody has any kind of fan favorites that they like about Laserfiche. That you think other people should know about. Something maybe you recently learned or something like that. So let me go into questions. All right, so far there are no questions, just my audio situation at the beginning, which I apologize for. Is anybody interested or had thoughts on, can Laserfiche do this or that? Anything I can help with today? I love this. Love when people add. So we have one. We've been using forms embedded in the web access repository. I am assuming that means maybe you have a custom tab in web access that allows you to fill out a form. All right, so let me just pull up kind of where, I don't have an example of that, but I can kind of walk through it a little bit. So if we log into the web repository, another cool feature of web access that you can do is you can customize tabs. So over here, you've got your details, your fields, preview, all of that, and you can create other customized tabs. And so what this client is suggesting is they have a customized tab which embeds a Laserfiche form over here for users to fill out. So if they're looking at a document of a certain type, maybe this tab is available, and then they can fill out a Laserfiche form and push it on. So that is an awesome use case. I would love to see a little bit more about it just because I don't have it. We have DocuSign built into one of those custom tabs. I don't think mine will work, but if I go in here, go into Rockstar, our folder moved, that's exciting. And take a look at our signed. So we can tie in other websites. I'm not sure mine is going to work. It's going to make me log in, which I don't know I don't know the exact credentials. But again, you can customize these web pages. We have done a webinar on that, so definitely take a look at customized tabs is what that's known as. Is there an overall dating system that can be used for all files? So when documents are brought into the system, by default, it is always capturing the date that the document is brought into the system. So you can see that by the date that it was created. So it's also automatically capturing like who brought it in, or if it was a workflow, something like that. So that is the norm out of the box. If you're looking for something a little bit different, sometimes you can use quick fields to extract the date off the document page and then, populate that. You can use and create your own metadata fields for applying dates to documents that might be outside of the actual creation date. So I would recommend metadata. If you want to talk through that a little bit more, please don't hesitate to reach out. How do you embed the form into the web client? Again, I'm going to defer you to I'll actually find the link and I'll send it out to the couple people who asked that. And then we have some couple general questions like what are favorite workflows for finance, police, and public works? Or how do you create your own custom tab? Again, I'll find that. So for finance, we see a lot of invoice routing or submissions. So, each department gets their invoice, they have to code it, and then they have to route it. If you don't have a good process for that, we see a lot of organizations doing kind of accounts payable routing. So an example, and this is just kind of a brief example. Each employee would have access to this form as it's for an existing vendor or a new one, and then they can select their vendor information. They can attach the invoice, line item out the invoice details, and then again route it for approval for purchasing. That's a good one for finance. Police. I don't work with a ton of police departments directly. I know that a lot of my team does, but in some scenarios, we have seen for case files, you can have a Laserfiche form created where, okay, I'm creating a new case file, and it does maybe a database lookup to some of your other systems to pull in like what the case number is and some of those details so that the metadata is auto applied, and then if it needs to route for approval before going into the folder or something like that, you can do that. So I would say kind of more auto filing. Police and public works, really any process that you have. So if you are for public works, you have new building projects. Maybe somebody kicks off the process through, again, a Laserfiche form. Hey, I want to do this building project, or this is got approved by council. We need to kick this off. So you can have a Laserfiche form built, populating a few pieces of information, and then once you click submit, it either routes for approval or it creates the folder structure in your repository with all of your standard subfolders. It can even generate some standardized documentation for you. So initiating some of those contracts, some of those, addendums, or just resources that you might need to distribute as part of the project. Any other questions? Otherwise, again, for some of you who asked about the custom tabs, I'll find some resources and send those along. Otherwise, I really appreciate that fan favorite from the team. And I guess just don't hesitate to reach out to our team with any other questions that you might have. Let me just try and figure out how to pull my PowerPoint back up. But yes, if you need anything, feel free to reach out. My email is laura@cdisupport or laura@citiesdigital.com. We're here to help. Thank you everyone for your time.